Today you are going to learn how can you represent decimals. Joe picked a seed from her flower. The seed has a mass of 245 thousandths gram. We want to know what are some different ways you can represent 245 thousandths. You can write the standard form, expanded form, and number name for the decimal, just like you can for a whole number. The standard form is just writing the number out, 245 thousandths, just like I highlighted in blue. If we look at the standard form, the 5 in the thousandths place, the value is actually 5 thousandths. So this 5 right here is actually 5 thousandths. It's not just 5. A place value chart can help you identify the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths place in a decimal. So just like we did yesterday when we were playing the game, we can use that place value chart to help us. Now we're going to talk about writing an expanded form. So when we write an expanded form, we're expanding the number out. So for example, if you were going to write a whole number in expanded form, let's just say we had the number 345. Well, how we would write that in expanded form, we would say 300 because this digit 3 is worth 300, plus the 4 is worth 40, plus 5 because the 5 is just worth 5 wholes. It's a little bit different when you're writing it with a decimal. So when you're writing with a decimal, each place is a fraction. So if we're going to look at our 2, which is in our tenths place, we're going to do 2 times 1/10. If we're going to look at our 4, which I'm going to highlight in red, which is in our hundredths place, we're going to do 4 times 1/100. And if we look at 5, which we have highlighted in blue, we're going to have 5 times 1/1000. If we were going to use the number name, we would just write out 245 thousandths. Let's look at the bottom with convince me. How many hundredths are in 1/10? How many thousandths are in 100? Tell how you know. I shrunk the page and moved it up so it is easier for you to see. So the first question asks, how many hundredths are in 1/10? Well, if I'm going to write 1/10, I'm going to have a 0 in my ones place, a decimal point, and a 1. Now, I need to know how many hundredths that is. So I have to put a digit in the hundredths place, which would just be a 0. So we have 10 hundredths in 1/10. Now we want to know how many thousandths are in 100th. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to write out 100th. So to write 100th, we would have 0 in our ones place, we would have nothing in our tens place, and a 1 in our hundredths place. This would be 100th. And we want to know how many thousandths are in there. So right now there's nothing in our thousands place. So I have to place a 0. So there are going to be 10 thousandths in 100ths. All right, let's go on to the guided practice. In order to do the guided practice, I think it's important for us to look at another example. We're going to talk about an equivalent decimal. Equivalent decimal just means the same. So, for example, if we have 1 and 4/10, which is over here, we have 1 whole and 4/10, that is the exact same as 1 and 40 hundredths. Because if you add a 0 after a decimal, it still remains the same. And we talked about that a little bit in calendar, and I'm going to show you what I mean. And then I'm going to erase it. So just take these notes in your math notebook. If I give you the number 4, and it's a whole number, and I place a 0 in front of it, the number is still going to be 4. So any whole number that you place a 0 in front of is still the same number. Now, if we take a decimal point, So I'm going to write a decimal point, which would be 0 and 4/10, and I place a 0 after it, it's still going to be the same amount because 4/10 is the same as 40 hundredths. So when you write a whole number and you put a 0 in front of it, the number stays the same. Just like when you write a decimal and you put a 0 behind it, the decimal still stays the same, or it is equivalent. We are going to move on to the guided practice. The number 3 and 453 thousandths has 2 3s. Why does each 3 have a different value? Okay, so if we are going to write 3 and 453 thousandths and we're going to evaluate the 3's, I'm just going to write it bigger over here. So we have 3 and, I'll use that as a decimal since I left that on there, 453 thousandths. Well, this 3 right here is worth 3 wholes. So it's just worth the number 3. But this 3 right here is worth 3 thousandths. So if I'm going to write 3 thousandths, I'm going to write 0, decimal point 0, 0, 3. So they have different values because they are in a different place in the number. All right, let's look at number 2. 4 times 100 plus 7 times 10 plus 6 times 1 plus 6 times 1/10 plus 3 times 100th plus 7 times 1,000th. All we're doing is writing that number out. So if we have 4 times 100, we know we have 400 something. I'm going to make this a little bit darker. 400, 7 times 10 would be 70, 6 times 1 would be 6. So 476. Now we have 6 times 1/10, so decimal point 6, plus 3 times 100th, plus 7 times 1,000. So we end up with 476 and 637 thousandths. Now we're going to write number 3, 4 and 68 thousandths. Okay, so we have a 4 in our ones place. Our and would be our decimal. And then we have 68 thousandths. Let me think. Well, there's nothing in my tens place. And I know I have to have a thousands place. So now I can put my 6 in my 8. So this would read 4 and 68 thousandths. Okay, we're going to do a little bit more practice before I let you go off on your own. Let's look at this number. We have 31 and 25 hundredths. If I'm going to write that number in expanded form, I would do, since the 3 is worth 3 tens, would be 30s, 3 times 10 plus, I'm going to change the color for you so it's easier to see. We just have a 1 in the ones place, so plus 1 plus, now we have a 2 in the tenths place. So to show that, we're going to do 2 times 1/10 plus, our 5 is in the hundredths place, so we're going to do 5 times 100th. And to write that out as a number name, we would write 31 We've got our decimal point, so we're going to put and. We have 25 hundredths, so 25, and we're going to write hundredths. All right, you are going to try one. So write down this number in expanded form. Pause the video and see if you can write that in expanded form, and then we are going to check your work. check your work with mine. So to write this in expanded form, 5 is in our hundreds place. So we're going to do 5 times 100 plus our 1 is in the tens place. So 1 times 10 plus our 2's in our ones place plus 2. Now we're going to do our decimals. So we have a 3 in the tens place. So we're going to do plus 3 times 1/10. We have nothing in our hundreds place, so we don't need to write anything in our hundreds place. But we do have a 4 in our thousands place. So plus 4 times 1/1000. Okay, I think you are ready. Go ahead and finish the problems on this page. And then when you're done, I'm going to have you check your work with someone and work on the back for the higher level problems.